Now remember this, the eye snot, and what do we call it? What's the Hawaiian pidgin word for it? Makapia, right? So that eye booger, sleep, eye snot. Well, why does it tend to gather in the medial angle of the eye versus the lateral angle? So if you wet your eyes in the morning and you have this stuff, you notice that it's more tends to accumulate on your medial part toward the center, right? Well, why does it tend to do that? Well, it has to deal with the flow of something across your eyes, namely your tears. So the interesting thing is that you have something called the lacrimal caruncle. So again, lacrimal refers to something involving tears. And if you look at, okay, so it's kind of hard to see on your own eyes because, yeah, I mean, even if you put a mirror really close, it's really hard to see. So if you have a really good friend or or a family member that doesn't mind you staring at their eyes, you can look here and if you see this kind of fleshy pink part, that's what you call the lacrimal caruncle. Now, let's talk about our Macapia. Why does it tend to gather toward the center? Well, it deals with the lacrimal ducts. So these are your tear ducts and your lacrimal glands. So what happens is that you have these lacrimal glands that produces all the liquids and protein or secretions you need to make tears. And this is the current picture in the Martini version. They actually had a better version in a previous, or more cartoony, but I thought it was more clear. So what they have here is the lacrimal gland, and we have all these ducts leading from that lacrimal gland. So when this gland produces a secretion, notice that it washes from the lateral side of or from upper and lateral, and then washes toward the medial angle of the eye, toward this lacrimal caruncle. So this is what I definitely want you to know. Hey, so then we have the lacrimal gland. Then we have these lacrimal ducts, these excretory ducts that carry the secretions from the tear glands. And then this washes from lateral to medial. And then it goes here into these actually small little. So if you look really closely again to your good friend or loved one that doesn't mind you staring at them, you can actually see these small, actually, so you might be able to see them in their own eyes as well. There's these little holes that you can see. And then you have these lacrimal puncta, so like punctuation marks, like a period is a punctuation mark, so they're like small little periods, small little punctuations in these little alongside the lacrimal caruncle, and these lead to little ducts right here, and these are called lacrimal canaliculi, and they end up in this something called the lacrimal sac, and this goes to the nasal lacrimal duct. And where does that end? Nasal refers to the nose, right? So yeah, the flow of tears is connected to your nose. And then it ends up in your nasal cavity, and that's where it comes out. And this sounds like a really good exam topic, potentially, right? And I love these order questions. So if I ask you, what's the order of the flow of tears in the eyes? Well, now you know it. And how is this useful? Again, notice that tears, they wash from the tear duct or tear glands and down the tear ducts, and then they end up in your nasal lacrimal duct and in your nasal cavity. So if you've never known people who, and it annoys me so much when people do fake crying, but this is an easy way to tell if someone's fake crying and just going through the motions. Well, I mean, there's stage crying, and then when people are ugly crying, what's happening? Their eyes are red and their nose is running. So why is the nose running? Well, if they're producing so much tears, then that's going to wash here down their face and also into their nasal cavity. So dead giveaway that someone's fake crying. They don't have the flow of tears from their nose. I mean, with real tears, that real emotional tears, they're pretty ugly. But again, what are tears? This lacrimal fluid. Well, actually, I think BioTrue, they used to say like, just works like your eyes. They used to say like something just like your tears, but I think they dialed it back maybe so they got some sort of like lawsuit saying like, hey, it's not actually like your tears. But why isn't it like your tears? Well, lacrimal fluid contains things like water, but why are tears salty? I mean, hopefully you cry. I mean, not that you want to cry all the time, but everyone's cried throughout their life, and tears are salty, right? Well, what's table salt? They contain all these electrolytes, such as sodium chloride and potassium. Also metabolites as well. Don't worry about what metabolites specifically for this class, but they also contain things like glycoproteins and mucin. So these help to maintain moisture and thicken your tears. So your tears are not, even though they're watery, they're not just plain water, salt water. And they also contain a little bit of lipids. So your tears actually have a lipid layer to that, and it helps to, again, just like the glycoproteins, helps to kind of like moisten and keep your eyes moist so it doesn't complete all this water and tears doesn't water from your tears doesn't evaporate off your eye, leaving your eyes all salty. So this is why, even though it says works like your eyes, it's really hard to make artificial tears because it contains this broad mixture of substances. And the interesting thing about tears is that there are different types of tears. So it's not just always the same composition, regardless of situation. So you have basal or these constant tears. And this is why this eye here looks moist. This is why your eyes are moist. You're always producing some layer of tears that keeps your eyes moist. And if you have like chronically dry eyes, or well, that means you have a low level of basal tears. And then psychogenic or emotional tears. So this is what they, again, with the real crying, well, when people cry, then they produce tears, and these are ones that are made in response to those emotions. And there's also reflex tears as well. So if you've done things like cut an onion, and then all the chemicals they irritate your eyes and cause you to tear up, well, those are reflex tears. And the interesting thing, don't worry about what specifically or what chemicals are specifically different between the types of tears, but they've done studies where they see that the chemical composition of these three types of tears differ even if they're coming from the same person.